Today, I'm going to be sharing with you my story of how yoga transformed and completely changed my life. It's such an interesting one because it is one that I never, ever, ever expected to happen in the way that it did. And it brought me to my purpose of teaching yoga, of sharing mindfulness, meditation, and this way of being with other people and helping transform so many other people's lives that I am incredibly, incredibly grateful for. So let's get started. I where do I begin? Okay, so I was never into yoga that much as someone who is so encapsulated by it and so obsessed with it, from the start. I was never one of those people. I actually came across yoga when I was in university, and I had walked past a hot yoga studio when I was in Belgium. And as a student living there alone, of course, when you're having studies, you're living abroad on your own, that can be stressful. And when I saw that studio, something inside pulled me to go in. And I remember just walking in, and it was a hot yoga studio, and they were just done after class. And I just remember seeing everyone's face looked so calm and relaxed. And there was this feeling in the room of almost like this energy, like my shoulders could even drop down a few inches, even though I didn't do the yoga class. And I remember speaking to the teacher and just feeling this pull that I couldn't describe. And back then, I had no idea about energy, any of these things. When I was younger, I felt that I experienced that. But as I was, in university and just growing up in this world, that kind of went away. That's another story for later. But it was this indescribable pull that drew me in. And when I was there, I got curious and I said to myself, okay, maybe I should just try a class. And so I did. So a few days later, went to my first hot yoga class. I was drenched in sweat. I remember being in that class, and you couldn't just like leave. I was like in the middle of the room, and you are drenched in so much sweat as if you just took a shower. Like it's not the most appealing sensation. And it was so warm in there because it was very heated, the room, that I felt like, oh my gosh, I can't breathe. And it felt like so intense. But at that point, I remember the teacher teaching us, okay, breathe. Like the breath is the most important thing. And I remember when I focused in on the breath, it was a way in that moment that I was like, okay, even when externally my mind might be saying, oh, this room is hot, this is uncomfortable, it might be going into this mindset of I need to leave, I can't do this. And that's so relevant to, how we think about when we go through life, when things start to get overwhelming or too much or feel like too much. And the mind comes up with all these almost like excuses or reasons of why you can't stay, why you can't go in. And when the mind comes up with that, what tends to happen is sometimes we follow that. But in the following of that, we miss an opportunity to meet ourselves in a deeper place. And that's not to say when something is painful, you stay, but this is something in yoga that I teach often is there's a difference between pain and discomfort or a new feeling that you're experiencing. And I say that because in that yoga class, what I was experiencing was discomfort. It was something new and uncomfortable. And every single part of me wanted to run away in that. I was in no pain. I was in no danger. I was actually in a really safe space. but every part of me wanted to run. And that can happen when we are reaching deeper levels of connection with ourselves, when we're awakening something within. And that moment I remember was such a profound learning because as I learned to not run away, not go to that instinct of, okay, it's uncomfortable, I need to check out. I stayed. I stayed in the pose and I focused on my breathing and I focused on the sensations. And what happened then was really interesting is that I dropped into my body and I felt this connection to my body that I had not felt before. And that's where, yoga started for me. I started to go regularly. I started to bring classmates. At one point, like half the class was filled with people from my class that I kept telling about yoga. And it really just helped me so much to feel more grounded, feel more connected to my body, and to have a space that I can release the stress from, everyday life that happens. Back then, I was a student, again, living abroad on my own, that comes with its own set of challenges. And so, yoga became like a safe sanctuary for me where I can release any stress and just come back and connect to me. Anyways, then fast forward. I had left university and then I had actually stopped doing yoga for a little bit. I had moved away from that studio and just life started to happen. And after just a series of events, by the way, I never, ever, 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 ever thought, oh, I want to be a yoga teacher. I'm going to go teach yoga. No, to be honest, it was almost like that would have been, I would have, in my mind, my ego at that time was like, that's like beneath me. So it never crossed my mind. I was like, no, I'm going to school. Like, this is my path that's laid out for me. This is the plan. I'm sticking to it. Well, sometimes we have a plan, but the universe has a different one for us. And that's exactly what happened in my case. I was living in Belgium at the time. I ended up later on moving to Luxembourg, which is, if you do not know, a tiny country. It is an actual country in Europe. And not long after moving there, all of a sudden, a lot of health things started to come up for me. So I remember very vividly, I would go and take a shower in the morning. And it would feel like the most exhausting thing, like as if I had run a marathon. And I do not like running, so that says a lot to do. And I had to hold myself up with the railings after getting out of the shower because I was so exhausted, even though I had just slept the whole night. And I had to go back into bed. I remember being so fatigued that I couldn't even put my clothes on. So I would just be in my towel wrapped in the bed. And all the energy that I usually had was gone. And I felt lightheaded a lot. I felt like this brain fog that came over me. I had a lot of gut issues. I knew something was happening inside, but I couldn't pinpoint what it is. So I had gone from doctor to specialist to doing my own research and whatnot. And it took some time. And then finally, I came across one doctor who tested me for Lyme disease because that's what she thought from what I was sharing I may have. And lo and behold, that had come up. And so at that time, I started treatment, which was about a year long on some serious antibiotics. I went through different treatments and everything. And then the tip of the iceberg was at towards the end of it. And I wasn't getting exponentially better. I was just getting just slightly better. But at the end of it, after several months, I had gone on a trip to Guadeloupe with friends. And there I went canyoning. If you don't know what canyoning is, I didn't know either before then. And we went on the day before our last. of leaving. So at least we had a good trip before. On the day before, we did this canyoning excursion, and canyoning is when you basically climb, you kind of trek, hike through this rainforest up, about an hour and a half. And then the guide will strap you into what is like rock climbing gear, basically. And then you start descending down, just the same as you're doing rock climbing, but the way down, exactly how you're going down. You go down a waterfall, and then you usually slide through all these canyons. I didn't get to the canyons part because for me, when we went, the guide did not actually have enough shoes for all of us. So, the proper actual shoes. And so for me, I had just my regular Nike shoes on, and he had strapped me in. I was starting to go down. And as I was going down, and this was a massive, massive waterfall, the water was coming on me and there was moss on the rocks. And as I was climbing, you're kind of holding the rope, you're going down lightly. And as the water was coming down on me and the moss was there, my foot slipped. And as the foot slipped, I went into the rock. And when I went into the rock, my arm that was holding the rope just let go when it hit the rock automatically. And when that happened, I suddenly realized in that moment that there was no safety lock on me, as there should have been. So all of a sudden, you just hear the rope and I go straight down to the bottom, and I fell exactly onto my left knee. And as I fell on my left knee, I rolled over and I had to stop myself from even falling further. And all of a sudden, I look down and I'm sitting there, my knees are bent, and my left knee is just gone. It's just empty. So no open wounds, luckily, but the left knee was just gone. It almost looked like as if you had your knee bent, but there was just a hollowness on the left side. So it's quite scary. And it was a very shocking moment. My whole body was in shock. And luckily, at that point, I had already been practicing meditation and yoga. And as I sat there, and while I should have been in panic, I kept looking at the water trickling from the waterfall and I meditated on it. And I just kept focusing on that and my breath. And at the same time, I just had my friend squeeze. I remember I told her just to squeeze the bottom of my leg, in between the knees, just to keep focusing on sensations outside of the injured part. The guide as well did not have an emergency phone, so it took 3 hours for the emergency helicopter to find us because we were in the middle of a rainforest jungle in Guadeloupe where they couldn't see us, they couldn't locate us. So during those 3 hours, even though there was so much pain in that area, I actually didn't even focus on it. I kept just focusing on my breathing, on meditating on the waterfall. I still remember the blue color to this day, and on the sensations outside of my knee. And it was that moment that I realized what a powerful tool it is that I had. And had I not had that, I don't know how it would have ended up because I could have very well freaked out in that moment. Because internally, of course, I wanted to. I had a lot of fears come up. Oh my gosh, am I ever going to walk again? What's going to happen now? I'm so active. Like, how am I even going to get out of this jungle? Luckily, 3 hours later, the helicopter found us, airlifted me. I got sent to the hospital and eventually made my way back to Luxembourg for the actual surgery itself, which then, was a whole process. It turned out that I did break my patella into two pieces. And then once I had the surgery, it was a whole journey of learning how to walk again from scratch. So I was in a wheelchair, then crutches, and slowly and slowly learning how to walk again. And it was this experience that really brought me so much gratitude for like these little things in our body, we take them for granted so often. Waking up, being able to stand up, being able to walk, being able to use our hands to talk. This is a gift that we've been given, and that experience really humbled and grounded me into remembering that what a gift. And so for the next long time, I did do rehabilitation and physio, but during the about it was about 6 or 7 months after the accident and everything, I remember I had a lot of time, right? I had the Lyme disease that I was recovering from, and now the knee injury. And it was one of those points in my life that I was like, what is happening? Why? Why is this happening? And what is this trying to show me? But for me, it was really, looking back now, it was like a stop. Like sometimes things in life happen because you're not paying attention, and life needs to get loud and show you to stop and look into a different direction. And so whenever something does happen that it feels like, oh gosh, all this is happening to me, this is so bad, there's also the question of, well, why might it be happening? What is it trying to teach me? Where is it trying to guide me? Because if some doors are closing, if something's trying to really come in front of me and wake me up and shake me up, can I also be open to that experience? Because there's maybe some hidden treasures underneath that. Even if in the moment it doesn't feel like that. And I won't lie to you, in that moment, I wasn't positive about it. I wasn't like, oh, like, what's the hidden meaning behind this? I was like, okay, this is horrible. Like, what am I going to do? And so the one thing that really, kept me, I guess, looking forward to, what's going to be next was with this time on my hands, I started to make this list called a happy list. And I wrote it on my computer as an Excel sheet. I still have it to this day. And I started to write out things that made me happy and brought me joy that I would like to do in my life and with my life. And it was very oriented towards purpose because up until that point, I had followed a very linear path of do this, go to school, work here, tick this box, tick that box. And I did those things, but when I did those things, I realized that I didn't feel so much like myself in them. So I had gotten to a certain level of goals or a certain level of things I thought that would bring me joy. But I remember in them, I felt quite lonely and empty and like they weren't me. So it was almost like I was just showing up and going through the rhythms and almost wearing this mask of, okay, this should make me happy. I should be okay. But I knew on the inside something was missing and I was disconnected in that. And that's a lot when I worked in the corporate world. And so when I had this time, I was suddenly making this happy list. And on the happy list, there was yoga. And again, I loved, what yoga brought me till then, but I never, ever, not even once had that feeling like I'm going to teach yoga. This is my thing. I'm so obsessed with it. No, definitely not. But I did write down yoga and a few other things there. And I remember I just prayed. I just said, okay, universe, God, angels, show me where I'm supposed to be. Open the doors, give me a sign, give me a clue. And it was about one day later, I was on Instagram and there was this girl that I was following, and she had just posted a post of a yoga pose and that she just finished her yoga teacher training. And it was with this one company, and she was writing about her experience. And again, it was something within me had this pull, this gravitation to click on it. I clicked on it, I read the blog, something in that moved me. And then I clicked on the teacher training. It was a US company that was really internationally known. And I clicked on their upcoming teacher trainings. And when I clicked on that, there was an upcoming one happening in Greece for a month. And again. So I don't, actually just remember in that moment, like it didn't even make sense, but I was like, let me just email them. I was, I was in bed with my crutches, with my leg broken, with Lyme disease. It made no sense. But I emailed them and I reached out and I said, this is my situation. I've had this accident. I'm interested in yoga. I don't want to teach, but I do, want to immerse myself into something that I am interested in and to go away for some time and just have that time for me and to heal my leg. Is this possible, especially at the stage of, healing and recovery that I'm in? And I received a response back, and one of the teachers had also had a knee injury previously, not the same one, but they assured me that I could come and they would help me and support me in the recovery while I'm there. And so I took a huge leap of faith, to be honest with you. It made no logical sense. Also, like where I was at in life then, like it made no sense for me to just randomly go on this teacher training. But what I've learned is that pull inside, it's never by accident. There's always a reason for it. And I'm grateful that I've had this pull, but I've also trusted it. Even when fears come up, even when doubts come up, even when everyone's like, "What are you doing? That's crazy? Like that's so random. What are you going to do with that?" I just kept going for it and trusting it. And so it was like a month later, I was on a yoga teacher training in Greece. And during that time, obviously, we had a lot of practice for the physical part of yoga, but also I started to learn about the spiritual, the energetic side about yoga, the philosophy. And I just remember being there and I was just sitting like this, like the whole time. There was like, I could not wait for the philosophy and the spiritual and the energetics. I would just be like a girl in love, like just mesmerized. And I would be hanging on every word, just wanting to hear more and wanting to learn more. And that's when I became so interested in what yoga is beyond the physical. Because when you go to a yoga class, you'll experience the physical, you'll feel good, but you don't always know why you feel that way. And that's because yoga is an energetic practice and very ancient practice passed down thousands and thousands of years. But every single yoga pose has to do with a different energy opening in your body. And that's why you feel so good and balanced after a yoga class, especially a proper yoga class. And so I went there. I really focused on my healing and especially my physical recovery. And the whole entire time, out of, I think it was about 20 students or so, more than half were saying, I want to teach. They were there with the intention to become a yoga teacher. And then the smaller majority, the smaller part of the group was, not interested in becoming a yoga teacher. And I was part of that smaller group. Like I was absolutely there, like, I don't want to teach. I'm just here to learn. This is fun. This is great, right? And then the final day of the teacher training happened, which is when we had to teach our class, and it was the final exam. And I remember being in the room before and feeling so nervous. And it was like this, oof, like this fluttering in my body, like, oh, nerves, you know? And then I also remember walking into the room, and you had to come and stand in the front of the class on your yoga mat to teach. And I remember when I came to stand there in front of the class of all these people, all these eyes looking at me for the first time I ever did. And my whole body, my whole being, I felt so relaxed. I felt so calm, and I felt very confident. And it was this calmness and this confidence that I had never felt before. It was different. And I felt this energy. It was like this fluttering of, I can only describe it as gold sparkles, like fluttering from the top of my head. And it just went down into my entire body. And my entire body, I could feel this vibration inside. And there was a voice that came in, and as I stood there on the mat, it said, "You are here to teach. You're here to be a teacher." And it was one of those moments that I'll never forget in life because it was that moment that I was searching for, where I was searching for what is my purpose? What am I here to do? I know I'm here to do more. And the answer came through right then and there. And I taught my class with so much fun and calmness and ease. And afterwards, I went back into the room and I remember it comes up now as well. I had complete tears in my eyes, tears of joy, tears of like, what was that? I've never experienced that kind of sensation, that kind of feeling that I had inside. But I knew I had to teach. I knew that was it. Even though I didn't know the how it would all work out, that's another story. But I knew I'm here to do that. And so after the teacher training, I remember I went home. I had quit, everything else, and I just started to teach. And also physically, my recovery completely changed. I remember going back to the physiotherapists and to the doctors, and they were all shocked at how my leg had recovered and how the mobility and the strength and the flexibility, how that came to be. They always said they've never seen that before. And I kept doing yoga to support that. And as well, I remember I just started feeling as well better and better health-wise. Even though I had stopped taking antibiotics, I had stopped taking and following, this big program that I felt was just dragging on. Instead, as I started doing more yoga, I started to get a deeper connection with myself, and that also started to uncover different answers for me where I needed to make changes, difficult changes in my relationships, in my environment, in who I was surrounding myself around, in my habits, in how I was showing up myself, where I was hiding, where I was afraid to be true to myself and afraid to show parts of myself. And so I kept hiding these things. And what ended up happening is that I didn't have Lyme disease anymore. So I remember I just felt feeling better and better. And then eventually I just realized I don't have any of the symptoms of the Lyme disease anymore. And it's from that experience that I truly believe and I know that we are so connected as humans, physically, emotionally, mentally, when something is happening emotionally or when your soul knows who you are here to be, but you are disconnected from that and you're following something else or you're hiding parts of yourself or you're holding so much on your shoulders, that starts to weigh on the body and then the body starts to speak through that. And so this is how I started teaching, and this is how it started to evolve. And it's not that it was sunshine and rainbows after that. It was starting to teach from the beginning, and I wasn't very good at teaching, and I would stumble a lot, and I would freeze in class, and it was a big learning curve. But as well, I remember it happened very fast. And I do believe when we are on the track of our purpose and our soul, things happen very fast, almost at lightning speed, because you are leaping past timelines because this is what your soul is meant to do. And that is what happened to me. And as I started teaching, then I started to work privately with people, and especially people who were injured or had soreness or were trying to get to a next level of fitness. In, professional sports, or they're playing, quite intensely sports, but having injuries and soreness and tensions in the body, working with them and helping them to heal and helping them to progress and seeing the evolution in them as well, just started to really ground this faith and this knowing of the power of yoga, not as yoga as oh, I'm going to sit there and just, breathe. But yoga is a holistic experience because that's what it is. It's not just the physical, it's the energetical. You don't come to yoga. You're not actually even on this video without a reason. You were drawn, you were pulled into this because you're ready. Your soul knows that this is your path now. And it is your opportunity to lean in and open up to what yoga can bring you. And in my experience, the more just open we are to it, the more it will guide you to where you need to go. So that is my story. I am so happy that you're here. I'm so grateful that you are here. I, as always, really love hearing from you. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below or send me a message. And check out the rest of my videos. I have some amazing yoga videos on here that you can start to practice, and we'll be uploading more as we go. I'm sending you so much love wherever you are in the world, and I will see you next time.